What a journey it has been since last week. It has been a journey, and the discussion around some of the things that I've been posting and the responses and the messages that I'm getting from that, whether they are public or private, it has been a journey from last week up until this point. And the one thing that I cannot escape, the one thought that I keep having is a thought that it's following the backdrop of the concept of the philosophy of the religious law, the idea of its continuance, its non-continuance, the role that it plays, along with not simply devotional growth and development, but human growth and development. And the one thought that from the comments and from the messages and from the responses, and then from my own meditation on what I have been posting in the material is perspective. And one of the things that I'm asking, and that I now want to ask as I'm here, how do you know what you know? How do you know what you know? Ask it one more time. How do you know what you think you know? You can take that from a natural perspective, you can take that from the devotional perspective, but for this moment, holding to the devotional perspective, how do you devotionally know what you know? From where and from whence has it arrived and appeared? And from the responses and from the material that I'm putting out, whether again, public or private, it has been fascinating and it has been interesting. And one of the thoughts that I want to now push out there is, how do you know what you know and from where does it come from? Now, the way I like to answer this when I am ever teaching anything is, I like to let the individual think about the process of creation. Because in that very first chapter of the book of Genesis, we have an example of how we are supposed to know what we know and for what use what we know is for. And so, aside from the power of perspective, aside from the power of perspective, there is inside of that a message of creation and the example of the Creator concerning creation. Because when you get into the idea of an ideal relationship, right? You get into the idea of an ideal relationship between the human being and between the invisible entity. Well, the blueprint of that ideal relationship is a physical bond, is an emotional tie through a physical deed or act. That's the blueprint. So the blueprint is, as I said, from something I heard from someone last week, if you think good and you feel good, then you do good, which is absolutely very misleading sort of philosophy, because that lets you believe that what you're doing is good based upon how it feels to you and based upon how you think it feels. I can therefore be a murderer because it feels good. I can therefore be a thief because it feels good. I'm doing good by stealing because I'm pleasing the feeling within me. It's very, very irrational when you think about the psychological philosophy behind that. And I can get the simplicity, wow, this makes me feel good, I'm gonna keep doing it. But the human condition, and especially the unreformed human condition, the human condition that doesn't know that it needs to have a state of reformed in its experience, a reformed experience, the human condition that does not know that its condition is not well, that can really be misleading and that can very go very, very bad. But to the individual conversation that is moving into the direction of, as we've been saying for weeks, that exodus. Seeing how the philosophy of the religious law, how that form of constriction is sort of dehumanizing, it makes you step back and it makes you think about, well, then if that's dehumanizing, how do I get my humanity back? And we ended up on, you know, different rides leading us to think about the ability and the opportunity and the right as a human being to make decisions. And so, as I'm going from last week to this week, and I'm having conversations and I'm seeing dialogue, the one thought that I had and that I wanted to present and bring out was, did the Creator from Genesis 1 take pleasure in the creation? Did the Creator in Genesis 1 take pleasure in the creation? I'm going to keep it simple in this thought. That question is just what it is. When you remember creation in Genesis chapter 1, did the Creator take pleasure in the creation? Now, the answer may automatically be, well, of course, because after everything that was created, it says, and it was good. Does that mean, and just think about this for a second, does that mean that creation was good? Or does that mean that what creation became was good? Just going to say that again. When you're hearing after everything that was created, it was good, does that mean creation was good? Or does that mean that what creation became was good? These are two different things. These are two different things. The first, to say that creation was good, is to take joy in the appearance of creation. Everything that was created was good. It looked good. It looked right. It felt right. There is the gaze of the Creator upon His work, admiring the work of His hands. Is that what is meant by when it says, and it was good? Is that what is meant, that the Creator admired the work of His hands? Or does it mean that what creation became was good? What that means, what creation became was good, what that means is that the function that creation served was good. Not the appearance, not what was manifested, but the order, the function, and the operation was good. Now, I'm more inclined to lean to the second. Leaning to the second, meaning leaning to what creation became was good, as opposed to creation in and of itself being good, because creation in and of itself really wasn't good. Look at a painting. When you look at a painting, is a painting good? If all the painting is the painting, does that make it efficiently good for creation? Think about that, not as an artist, but as an observer. As an observer in an art museum, when you're seeing art and you're observing the art, are you thinking that the art is good, and for what reason? I'm pretty sure the same sort of technicality that we would observe in such a thing, I want to place that same sort of technicality into the one in Genesis chapter 1 doing the creating. Because there's a difference between creation being good, and there's a difference between creation appearing good and appearing physical, and then there is more along the lines of goodness from what became. And that's why I have a quote from Galatians 6, 9, and 10, where Galatians 6, 9, and 10 is saying, let us not be weary in well-doing, as we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. And so I have this definition here because there is the word good in it. And what is surrounding this word good is the same sort of good that is found in the book of Genesis 1. And that same sort of good is a good of well-doing. The good of well-doing. You can follow the narrative of this term good, whether it is in the Galatians or whether it is in the Thessalonians, or whether it is in the Romans, or whether it is in the Ephesians, or whether it is in the Psalms, this term good, as the Bible has it listed, it's not good as in well. It's not good as in outward appearance or outward beauty when it comes to creation. It's more along the lines of doing well. Reading Genesis chapter 1, and then you're hearing that after everything that was created, it says, and it was good. In reality, that means, and it was well doing. It was absolutely well doing. And that's sort of Bible context and language when it comes to good. To do good means to do well. And to do well changes the definition of what it means to be quote unquote good, because when you're doing well, it's not just for you, as the example here says. Let us do good unto all. So when it's saying in Genesis 1 that everything that was created after it was created, it was good, well, it's meaning that everything that was created was well. And it was well to the point and to the fact that it served. And so my original question, did the creator, when he said that it was good, was he saying that it was good due to the fact of creation's outward appearance? Or was he saying that everything that was done was good due to what creation became, meaning the inward manifestation forming outward? It would have to be the inward manifestation forming outward, because everything that was created did well for what was around it that was also created. That's a perspective of creation, as if we are both observer and creator. And that's relevant. That's relevant because our discussions in the past weeks about the philosophy of the religious law and the constraint of the conscience. From having an experience of being told what to do, how to do it, when to do it, where to do it, why to do it, and the level of comfort the human being has for that, because the human being naturally is lazy. The human being naturally doesn't like to think for itself. The human being likes ease. Whatever is easy, the human being wants it, especially when it comes to thinking, especially when it comes to doing, especially when it comes to feeling, especially when it comes to anything. Whatever is easy for the human being will do it. Well, the mind within the scriptures is sort of wanting the human being to see that sort of condition within itself to break the mold. And to break the mold for the purpose of what is good, or should I say, of what is well. And of what is well is what is serving, before it can serve anything outside, I'm speaking of the devotional conversation, of what is serving the environment within. What is serving the environment within. And so that's why I asked, how do you think you know what you think you know? How did you arrive at the conclusions that you think you have? Did those conclusions just simply come from a routine manifestation in which a surface understanding, or which a physical appearance is something all that you really needed, and that's how you think you know what you know? Or do you actually know what you know due to you having an experience with what is actually within you, to take what is within you, turning it inside out and outside in, upside down and right side up, just to understand what is well? And that's the example from Genesis 1, the example of doing good, or the example of doing well. It is because creation served creation that what was created was good. It is because creation served creation that what was created was perceived and understood to be good. I'm pointing that distinction out because although that language there is, when we read it as a story. God created, and what God created, it was good, and then we move on. But the context and the language of that placement of there that is used, good, there is more to it. than simply a passing over. What is good was good because it affected the whole realm around what was created. There was no joy. What I'm saying by saying all of this is that there was no joy in the physical appearance of creation to the Creator, because the Creator knew already that what would be created would be appealing, sure. What would be physically or naturally appealing, it really shouldn't matter, because first of all, if we're going to take John 4:24 true, that God is a spirit, and then if we're going to take in Luke that a spirit doesn't have flesh and bones, well then whatever here is doing the creation, we really shouldn't be thinking that they're taking gratitude in what is physical or natural. It's actually the contrary. There is no joy in what is worked. And that's another thing. There's no such word as creation used from Genesis 1 to Genesis 2 to Genesis 3. The term creation isn't there. What's actually there is work. Day 7, God stopped his work and rested. It is work. Each day of creation is a work or a workmanship. And that also changes the idea of this term good when you compare it to what was created and how. The fact that everything that was created after it was created was good. The work was good. Why was the work good? It was good because it served the other works that were around it. And so the beauty, what I'm saying, the beauty isn't found in the glory of the colors. The beauty isn't found in the sound of the waves of the water. The beauty isn't found in the vibrant atom, because the heart of the atom is sound waves. The beauty isn't found in the heart of the atom. The beauty isn't found in the physical appearance or the smell of something. The beauty is more found along the lines of what gives rise to that beauty. And what gave rise to that beauty was the good. The good wasn't physical. The good was internal. The good wasn't represented by an act or a deed. The good was represented by compliance to what was internal. If you want to think about this in a natural science terms, and if we're going to say that the atom is just it for life, at the heart of the atom, the center of the atom is sound. So by saying all of this, I'm saying that whatever was created or went into creation had a sound that it had to resonate with and understand and then listen to and then do. It had a sound that it had to resonate with, that it had to listen to, that it had to understand, and that it had to do. Creation didn't just come about because God said it and then it was. That's not reality. If we're going to look at this from a scientific perspective, if we're going to look at this from a logical perspective, nothing is ever done without thought. Nothing is ever done without thought. Whatever is spoken has to be heard, right? Whatever is spoken has to be heard. I'm speaking and you're hearing. You're not just hearing, you're processing. You're not just processing, you're thinking. You're not just thinking, you're feeling. You're not just feeling, you're imagining. You're not just imagining. You're doing so much in this environment that we don't really know, but it happens just within us. I'm saying this because that's really what took place and continues to take place within creation. Sound. Sound has to be heard, sound has to be processed. There's no such thing as God saying this and then it is. What the author of the book of Genesis, chapter 1, is saying without saying it is that there is a process to creation that is a continuing process, that is a silent continuing process between what is heard, what is understood, and then what is done. Silent process between creation, the one that's creating and the one that's hearing, between what is understood, what is realized, what is rationalized, and then what is done and put into action. So when it's here, that Genesis chapter 1, there's really, in reality, when we're not reading it as a storybook story, as we're accustomed or traditionally taught to do, there's no such thing as God said and it was. That's not true. And there's a theme from Genesis to Malachi, from Malachi to Revelation, just to prove that point simply. But if we don't have the rest of the Bible, and if we all we have is Genesis 1, and if Genesis 1 is scientific and we're going to treat it as if it's scientific, we have to look at it in a more rational way, especially if we're going to look at it in relation to us as human beings. And if we hear something as a human being, we have to process it. If the atom, and if we're going to continue to scientifically say that at the heart of the atom is a sound wave, and that this sound wave is what gave birth to everything scientifically, well, then a sound wave has to be interpreted by a hearer. And there are elements. There are elements that had to hear a sound wave in order to multiply other sound waves, in order to multiply other sound waves, in order to give birth to mass and matter, in order to form what we now can see and continue to keep seeing. I'm saying all of this because my discussions on the philosophy of the religious law, my discussions on the ultimate definition and the rational way, more logical according to the mind within the scriptures, to view this term called Jesus Christ, to view this term called Emmanuel, is that when you look at how nature works, nature does not work the way religion works. I'm going to say that again. When you look at how nature works, nature does not work the way religion works. When you look at how nature works, and you're looking at a mind creating nature, there's a very clear difference between the mind that created nature and then the mind that invented religion. As I said last week, when you get into the realm of religion, everybody's worshiping the same, everybody's thinking the same, everybody's made to feel the same, everybody's doing the same acts for the same quote unquote divine favor. When you look out in nature, you're seeing the complete opposite to what religion is. You're seeing variation. And you're not simply just seeing variation, you're seeing variation that has thought. I don't think we realize it, but it takes a lot for creation to continue to do what it does. Creation has to continue to use its mind in order to do what it does. If creation never thought, if creation never continued to process the wave of sound within it, creation would never be what creation is. Everything would fail. The sun would fall. Everything would drop. We would have no air. But there is intelligence within the visible and the invisible elements of creation. And when you look at creation, and I'm saying all of this because there are individuals out there that believe God gave religion. And I'm showing the difference between the God that gave religion and the creator that's creating creation. We can't say that these are two of the same figures because they are not, because their states of mind are operating differently. Their states of mind are operating differently. And so, harping back to the constriction of the philosophy of the religious law and how contrary that is to the natural human disposition, yet that being the blueprint of how the religious world is, that is the blueprint deception for the human being, religion, and how it is supposed to operate. And that's okay. This is, as I've shown on episode 2 Justification, as I've reviewed on Justification Live week after week, this is something that the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches that this is the blueprint of life. This is the blueprint of the religious world. This is the blueprint of traditional religious thought. It's nothing shocking to the mind inspiring the words within the scriptures. It's not shocking. This is the blueprint. That's just the way it is. Nothing will change that. Nothing can. But when you're looking outside and you're seeing the sort of intelligent variation that exists outside, and then you're comparing that to a religious experience, to where nature has, I would say, no law constraining it, but the only law that it has is to obey the sound originally given to it. And once obeying that sound originally given to it, whether that sound is going into the tree, whether that sound is going into the plant, whether that sound is going into the animal, whether that sound is going into the rain, whether that sound is going into the seasons, whether that sound is going into Whatever we constitute nature to be, nature is following the individual sound given to it individually and also as a whole. And there is no one experience that is similar within nature, despite the similar manner of operation and continuing operation that we see consistently within creation to be. We see consistency because they are working together for what is well. Individually, their systems are different. We should be able to translate what we see in nature into our own real life. Because if we did, we would understand that the devotional experience that we have, just as our human experience, is not supposed to be the same individually. Fellowshipping, that's a whole different thing. Because we see fellowship in creation and there is wholeness. There's no discrimination with creation. Creation doesn't discriminate against itself. What is alive is alive, what is dead is dead. What is alive is made to be alive, what is dead is made to die. When you jump over into the human realm of things, there's no consistency. There are multiple religions, there are multiple deities, there are multiple this, there are multiple that. It is all spiritual and supernatural and fantastic and phenomenal and appeasing, because that's just what the human mind is, because we're not seeing creation. We're not taking our order from what is already established. We're not taking the lesson. And what is the lesson? The lesson is that it is not law that makes creation be one, and it is not law that makes creation individually fulfill its role. There is a choice. Every single day, creation has a choice. Every single day, creation has a choice to either be creation or not. Every single day, creation chooses to be creation. This ability for choice is something that the living God, the mind that placed into this realm called Earth, the invisible intelligence regulating life's consistency, is the same thing that has fashioned and continues, should we will, the environment within us. What we're seeing in creation is supposed to be reflected within us. We're supposed to match what we're seeing. The same ability to make a choice, we have the same ability. Book of Proverbs, chapter 3. Remember my law and my commandments, keep them in your heart and live for long life, and peace shall they give you. This isn't saying put into practice a routine, because you don't need your heart to keep a routine. You don't need your heart to do a deed or an act. You don't need your heart. All you have to do is just do it and believe that you're doing something right. And that if I don't continue to do this, God will not be happy with me. If I continue to do it, I'm going to be straight on strict, and God's going to be right with me with God, and it's going to be great. But that's not reality, because eventually the constriction on the conscience for such a routine is going to backfire. And whoever that backfires on, that's their thing to deal with. But to the individual that sees that backfire and that begins to understand how dehumanizing it is to maintain a relationship to something invisible via something physical, and how ridiculous that is, because not even creation operates in that way. Again, as I've said in the past weeks, props to whoever that is, because to take such a stand is to take a stand for the right of the devotional conscience to make a decision just as creation does. And it is that right to make a decision and to continue making that decision that we come to know how we know what we know, which is the question I asked originally. How do you know what you know? How do you devotionally know what you know? As we all enter into the religious world, we only know what we know from what we hear. We may do what we do, we may dabble in what we dabble, we may do whatever, but at the back of our minds is always the first thing we hear. That's always what guides our experience. It's guided by the conscience of another individual. It's guided by a past experience. It's guided by whatever. We're religious and we're superstitious, and we take that and we call ourselves independent thinkers. But in reality, all we are is being driven by some emotional tie to whatever we have spiritually back within us. That's the general experience. Create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me is an experience that is not the general experience. That's the experience of creation. And when I'm saying of creation, I'm going to see if I can put this in a more technical way. That's the experience of an invisible element coming into contact with an atom, and the atom, whose heart is a sound wave, releasing sound into the invisible element taking in that sound, digesting that sound, processing that sound, reiterating that sound to itself, and then doing with that sound what it should to create and to produce what it should, so that it can then cast forth a sound out to create others, to create other sounds, and to inspire other sounds to do. That's the essence of what the beauty of creation is. And that's the essence of the process of the growth and the development of the devotional conversation. That's how we come to know what we know, and that's how creation remains as unshaken as it is. It has knowledge from handling the sound. It has knowledge from handling the sound. That's our example. Our devotional experience is supposed to handle the sound for personal understanding. Just as creation handled that sound for personal understanding, and creation continues, the seasons never drop, so too we, as human beings and as individuals on a devotional journey, have to take in the sound of the words. Taking in the sound of those words, we then understand and reflect them however we do. There was no guide. If you go back to Genesis 1, there was no guide. There was no detail like, light, I need you to form, and when you form, go through this process and that process and this process and that process. There was no manual. Just like for us, there's supposed to be no manual. There's no crutch. We have to go into the unknown for the purpose of knowing, right? That's the whole thing. As creation became from darkness, so too we are to become from knowing darkness, from knowing nothing. That's how we gain the ability and develop the skill of making decisions. That's how we become human. But anything else keeps us less than human. And it's when we realize that this has been keeping us less than human, that's how then we become angry. All of a sudden, I'm a skeptic. All of a sudden, I'm atheist. All of a sudden, I'm this. All of a sudden, I'm that. Because we have been deceived and misled, not realizing that we have not been able to make a decision about what we would believe and how. But going from last week into this week, and everything that I've posted and everything that has come up in discussion, the power of perspective has stood out, and also the gaze of the Creator upon creation. Because gazing upon creation, there was no infatuation with creation's appearance. It was about how technical creation was, and the use that creation had for creation for its own self that made it good. It is that same process of growth and development that is supposed to go on within us. And I'm bringing all of that up due to me bringing up the idea of the philosophy of the religious law of taking one's righteousness by doing religious deeds, baptisms, penances, whatever you want to say. That's not the actual operation, according to Genesis 1. That's not the actual operation of what life is. Life is not religion. Religion is the blueprint trap. And the story that is within the scriptures from Genesis to Malachi is an escape from that blueprint and a return to what the essence of Genesis chapter 1 is, which is an essence of creation, Again, the psalmist says in Psalm 51, create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. The idea of renewing a right spirit and creating a clean heart is an idea of creation. In this verse is the art of making a decision. Create in me, I will, to create. Everything there is a decision that the individual writing that psalm is saying, and writing it on behalf of the individual that is then living, whether then or now. Because it goes back to after everything was created, it was good, not for the beauty, not for the appearance, but for what was inwardly manifested outwardly. That's a whole different experience. I'm putting these experiences, I'm contrasting them, because when we get into the realm of religion, it is a realm where what you are doing is pleasing to the eyes, and it is well seen to make one wise, and it is well to keep one fed. That sounds familiar. That's what the woman found out when she ate from that accursed tree at the center of Eden. And so that's the blueprint, religion, I'm saying. And we have to break that, is what the theme of the scriptures is. Breaking that by an experience for understanding. And understanding not just I'm going to know myself and just live, I'm going to do this and just live, I have understanding within me, I am all there is. Not that. That's also religious philosophy that is very misleading. Going back to the Proverbs, keep my words in your heart, take them and live. By them you shall have peace and long life. It is as we bring the words of the scripture into our heart and live them and exercise them, fail at them, and understand their sound. That's how understanding is formed. That's how we know what we know. And from there, our human condition will be fed from that task, because our human being absolutely feeds off of our devotional conscience. That's what the author of Genesis 1 is getting at when it comes to quote unquote good. The conversation is to do well, and the human being to do well for the conversation. That means that the members are supposed to be taken care of within. Everything that was created was good because what was created served creation. Creation served creation. What had light lit up for all. What grew up for all. What came from for all. Creation served creation. At that point, there was no need for God to keep saying, create, or this happen, let this happen. There's no need, because creation was doing it on its own. Creation was good. That's what it means to do good. It means to be well, to the point where what is well is serving what is around, what is serving around, what is around, what is serving around, what is around, what is serving. The ability to make that decision and to keep that decision going. You don't get that remaining strict to the code of Moses. You don't get that remaining strict to the code of the philosophy of the religious law, I should say. Forget Moses, just the code of the philosophy of the religious law, taking one's righteousness by doing a deed and an act. Again, there is a carnal sense to, sure, this is keeping me in line, I need to keep doing this. But you're deceiving yourself because you're not handling yourself. You're letting another mind handle you, because no divine entity is telling you or has written anything for you to do that somebody else has written for you to do. It's very illogical. But we have the right to believe what we want to believe, sure. The idea behind Genesis 1 is an idea of creation via thought from the process of realizing sound. Creation via thought from the process of realizing sound. What went into the invisible element was a sound. What came out was something physical and well for what was around it, an environment. Same thing. When it comes to us, we have to take in words from the scriptures. We have to take that in and let that sound resonate with what is within us, so that what is within us, the environment within, can have for the environment within, so that it can have for the environment within, to do good continually. And so I'm loving all of the discussion. I'm loving all of the feedback because you get to see and you get to hear thoughts, who is thinking and who isn't, who is remaining within their paradigm or not there, or who is remaining within the paradigm and who is constructing landscape. You get to see this. At least I'm seeing this. And I'm finding it absolutely fantastic and brilliant because there's not much thought in the realm of theology, nor in the supporters of it. And there's not much thought in the realm of those that are anti theology and the supporters of it. But there is thought within the individual that has gone through something, and that is taking what they have gone through and that they are processing it logically alongside a mind greater than theirs, not a human mind, but the mind that is within the scriptures. And I get that that's a little weird to say because the human mind wrote the scriptures. I'm talking about the philosophy that is within it. There is a philosophy that is within the book of the Bible that will allow the individual truly concerned with it to transcend what is within themselves, and then to weigh what is within themselves with the philosophy that is therein. And so I'll just end it there because I could go on about that. But for this week and the entire week, for the sake of the devotional creation that should be, for the sake of the devotional creation that one should have, doing good. And doing good not according to what we perceive as good, just as there's a definition of sin that we perceive as transgression or sin, whatever. Doing good according to the outline that is within the scriptures. To do good is to do well. To do well is to serve. To serve is to serve the environment and the environment of what is within. Just as creation yet serves its environment both physically, or should I say visibly and invisibly. Invisibly, is that even a word? Visible and invisible. Creation still serves itself. That's the example that we have to take. And so with everything that we can logically see creation doing, bringing that in to what is within us, because what is out there is that's going on. There's intelligence within that. Within us, we got to have that same sort of intelligence. We got to have that same sort of drive. We got to have that same sort of continuance. And creation isn't just doing it alone. Creation is still vibing with the sound that was first given to it. Problem is, we don't know the sound given to us because we are so covering our conversations, thoughts, and feelings with traditional folklore and opinions and personal beliefs and emotional ties to things. And we have to let that go. We have to be empty. Months ago, once I began this program with my television network. One of the first things that I taught, and side note, props to Preach the Word Worldwide Network, is the emptiness that we need in order to move forward. Creation doesn't take place when anything is full. Creation takes place when there's chaos, when there's conflict, and when there's nothing. We got to go back to that. We have to embrace the nothingness that our conversation is and not be afraid of what we're going to find out, because what we're going to find out is the understanding and the knowledge that is supposed to guide our human being to be what it's supposed to be. That's, again, the heart of all of this. The devotional conversations rightness for the rightness of our human beings' growth and development. And so take that from now till forward, the rightness, and that rightness applying to creation, and that creation applying to good, and that good applying to well-being, and that well-being applying to the service of what is going on within the conversation, its thoughts, its feelings, and everything from that.